In September 2021, we decided to escape the rainy summer and go to Sardinia. The prospect of white sandy beaches, summer temperatures, Italian flair and winding routes made our decision easy. So we set off from Munich to Genoa. We decided to take the scenic route and complete it in 2 stages rather than push through in one go. We met at a gas station in Munich to set off together towards summer, sun and sunshine. The route took us from Munich via Austria, where we crossed the Penzer Joch. The way was prepared with beautiful curves and several fantastic views. Except for a small rain shower on the first evening, just before our hotel, we had the sun good on our side, with temperatures around 20 degrees. The further south we drove, the warmer it got. After almost 700 kilometers, we finally arrived in Genoa. The traffic there was our first real attunement to what will await us in Sardinia. When we saw the sea on the horizon for the first time was when the vacation began for us. And not long after, the ferries came around the corner. The check-in for the ferry had the obligatory vaccination checks, but otherwise no extraordinary regulations. After a short wait, we were able to board. Stowing the motorcycles was handled by the ferry staff, and so we set off to explore the ship. After a quiet night at sea, we arrived in Porto Torres during a beautiful sunrise. Leaving the ferry was easier than finding our parked motorcycles again. After leaving the port area behind, we fought our way through the streets of Porto Torres. By consent of the group, we decided against a pre-planned route along the coast. However, later it turned out that the new route included mainly expressways and not the expected scenic landscapes. After a long discussion, we decided to return to the coast and drive along it as long as possible, until we arrived at our first hotel in Porto San Paolo. Once we checked in the hotel, it was clear to us that we would end the day relaxing at the beach and taking advantage of the last rays of sunshine. The next day, I decided to just drive around and explore the area rather than spend the day at the beach. I drove south along the coast before I moved inland and continued to avoid the main roads. I was surprised by cows that suddenly stood on the road. As I should find out later, it is not uncommon that farm animals just stand on the road and block your way. The further I went, the fewer motorcycles and tourists crossed my path. I enjoyed the lonely roads that seemed to get increasingly rough. I left the herd behind and headed back to the hotel. Finally, the time had come. The day I would ride the Trans-European Trail, or TNT in short. I had been looking forward to this day for so long, and now it was time. My two companions drove along the coast to Cagliari, where we would meet again in 2 days, while I would start the route over the approximate 400 km long TET that I had been planning for so long. With my fully packed twin, I set off and left the paved roads to follow the TET. The first section was easy gravel and sand, which led me to become a bit careless. "30 meters I had set up my cameras, I wanted to turn around at a slope at walking speed. I should have known better. I dropped my bike against the slope and had to unload all my bags to be able to pick it up again. As it turned out over the course of the day, it wasn't the last time I'd have to pick up my twin. If you want to hear more about my challenges on the TET, feel free to watch my video on TET Sardinia, which will be released later. Nevertheless, demoralized by the challenges of the day, I decided to leave the TET behind and take the paved roads to Cagliari the next day. Plagued by the extremely sore muscles and the effort of the previous day, I made my way to our meeting point in Cagliari. Although I didn't take the scenic route to make it, I have to say that Sardinia is beautiful off the tourist roads. In the afternoon, I finally arrived in Cagliari, and after a good shower, we set off to the beach to find a restaurant and exchange the experiences of the past days. The following day, we left the motorcycles at the hotel and explored Cagliari. Of course, the San Benedetto market was not to be missed. After we had enough of the sights, we went looking for flamingos before we ended our evening at the beach. The following morning I decided to get up long before the others and enjoy the sunrise before we continued our way to Guspini. I found that I liked the western part of the island more and more. We would have loved to enjoy the sandy beaches, but unfortunately we had to make it in time to the hotel to check in. So we enjoyed the way along the coastal road until we drove off the tourist roads into the interior of Sardegna. In early October, we enjoyed the warmth at 31 degrees while we passed through small towns and uninhabited areas. Finally, arriving at the hotel, we enjoyed the last ray of sunshine by the pool before turning to dinner and calling it a day. After a good breakfast, we headed to the beach, which is located on a dune. The way to this beach can be challenging if you ride a street bike. With an adventure bike, on the other hand, it can be pure fun. We were fortunate that the beach was almost deserted and we could unwind at the beach bar there. We spent half of the morning there and enjoyed the sun and tranquility. On the way back, we passed the disused mine Brasse Laveri. I'm really sorry for the mispronunciation if I've done that, which I've probably 100% did. The lavery of Narakauli is also called Brasse Lavery, due to the owner, English Lord Thomas Alnett Brasse. The mine started its activity in 1900 with the processing of blende. Blende is a material from which zinc, cadmium, gallium and indium were extracted. The lavery had been refurbished many times, but in the 70s it was demolished and now it represents one of the most impressive and meaningful symbols of the architectural property of the Geo Mining Park. On the way to Bosa, we drove through an area where a few weeks before a terrible forest fire had raged. The atmosphere had something of a horror movie. The burned trees and bushes next to the roads depressed the mood, and the light fog only intensified this feeling. Again and again we drove through smaller villages which seemed to have been spared from the fires. However, we did not want to imagine what these villages had to go through. Just in time for the sunset, we arrived in Bosa. We decided to stay there for the next 2 days, rest a bit, and enjoy the last 2 days in Sardinia. We explored the small town of Bosa and the Castello Malespina, which unfortunately was closed, and so we could only really see it through the drone. The beach of Bosa invited to relax and go swimming. However, I can imagine that it can be very crowded during the summer months. In the evening we once again enjoyed the beautiful sunset before we devoted ourselves to the evening food search. The last day on Sardinia had dawned and we made our way back to Porto Torres, where we would take the ferry to Genoa. The weather was getting windier and colder, and so we already got a slight idea on what to expect back on the continental mainland. We tried to enjoy the remaining moments on Sardinia. With the sea to our left, we made our way to our last stop, which was still on our list, the Neptune Grotto. Unfortunately, the wind had become so strong that it was closed, and we had no way to check off the last item on the list. The wind even got so strong that we were worried about leaving the bikes unprotected. I really didn't feel like picking up my bike again. So we made our way to the port, where we were greeted by a Tirrenia ferry in a Batman design. The entry into the ferry was very simple and uncomplicated, as on our outward journey. However, this time I was not comfortable by the way in which the bikes were fastened, and so I secured it again myself. My advice, therefore, always carry a tension belt with you. We familiarized ourselves with the ferry and regretted not taking our ready meals with us, as the food in the self-service restaurant was pretty grotty. The crossing was not as quiet as the outbound trip, which didn't stop me from sleeping like a baby. It was a little bit different for the other ones. Once we arrived in Genoa, it turned out that getting off the ferry was not as easy as expected. Due to the fact that so many vehicles wanted to leave the ferry, things went haywire. Back on the continental mainland, the Sardinia vacation was over. In Genoa, we made a stop at the KTM dealer to tighten the chain of one of our bikes before heading home. The vacation in Sardinia was breathtaking, and I will definitely come back. Next time, though in mid or early September, to have more of the late summer. I took away so many beautiful moments and have still not seen so much of Sardinia. I can recommend this island to everyone, whether it's by motorcycle, camper or car. It has so many different and wonderful places, and places that you just have to come back. I saved all the routes that we drove as a GPX, which can be downloaded at the link below. Now it only remains for me to say, if you liked the video, leave a thumbs up, like and subscribe for future videos.